I'm using 5 fingers. You need to have 4 shots that you're super good at. Pick the 4 you want. You know, everybody's got a favorite shot that you like throwing it. Pick 4 and make them super good. Right? Everybody, and those are the 4 you always need to use. You want to keep your tools sharp. It's the term that everybody uses. Right? You want to keep your tools sharp. You got a toolbox. It's full of shots. And you want to keep 4 of them super sharp. These are the ones that you can always throw, and you can throw them perfectly, and most of the time you get kills with them. Those are your 4 sharp tools. You want to keep those. Now outside of that, you got a bunch of kind of middling shots that, you know, you can throw pretty good. Maybe they don't work all the time. Maybe they're super situational. You know, and then you have like weird, like what they call 10% shots. Right? Your 4 super sharp shots are what we call 90% shots, which means they work 90% of the time. Then you have like, you know, a few 10% shots, which means they work 10% of the time. Which means they're just ridiculous, they're super fun to throw, right? And, you know, well, there's some people who's like, spins are pretty much a 90% shot. But yeah, and this is shot creation. So, you know, you watch a movie or, you know, you're thinking about stuff at your house and you come up with some weird idea for a thing, you know, and you go out to the park and you think to yourself, like, what if I could actually make this like mechanically worthwhile, right? And so you start just messing around with stuff like, you know, against somebody, you're just like, what if I want to do this like, thing, right? And the fact is that these shots, you have to accept that these shots only work about 10% of the time. But I fighter practice about 3 weeks ago, like I was fighting a friend of mine. I was like, I want to do this thing. So I just like took my sword and I was like, boom, and it worked perfectly. I was like, he didn't do anything over here. And when I came back here, I knocked his sword out of his hand and I just like squared him up right in the rib cage. It was awesome. It's like swords all flying around all over the place. It's like my 10%, one of my 10% shots. It looks stupid, and people are just like, I don't know why people don't just stab me every time I do it. Well, most of the time they do, but. And those are the kind of, this is the process of shot creation, right? You know, you take these things, and what I'll do, you know, what's gonna happen, what would happen, is I'll take this 10% shot, right? And it works 10% of the time. And then I'll take it and I'll deconstruct it into its parts and pieces. Like, why, what happens during this 10% of the time that it works that doesn't happen the other 90% of the time, or the other 80% of the time, right? What happens in this very rare circumstance that keeps this shot from working all of the time? And you can break these things down. You break it down into components parts. You know, just cut out all the middle stuff. You know, that big shot I showed you guys, right? Like, boom. So, you break it down. I'll do the first part and the last part. What does that look like? There you go. Right? And so people throw that shot. That's the money shot. Right? So you could start with this. You break it down into pieces and figure out what of this works and what of it doesn't, and you end up with a shot that everybody in Amp Guard throws because it works. And we figured out what those component pieces were. And that's how like all these shots get created, right? You know, there's a bunch, you know, everybody has these newbies who like, you know, first day at the park and they watched Star Wars last night. They're like, I'm gonna do lightsaber stuff. And they come out and they're doing like all kinds of like, making noises, you know. And it's awesome. But, you know, you can recognize weird things, and if you take it apart, you know, you're like weird overhead stab into like a twirly thing, and you break it down into its pieces and figure out what works, you end up with like, you're gonna end up with like, you know, I'm gonna break this down into like exactly what happens. Body fake that opens here, fake shoulder, level change here, boom, to this stab right here, right? This is gonna hit you right here, right? So it's like, boom. And that's a shot people throw, right? You go from like some weird lightsaber duel where the dude's like, wah, to like something that actually works in Amp Guard. Boom, shoulder stab. So when you have, you know, and you know, I'm not trying to like be rude to, you know, a lot of these newer kids, but you'll have newer people to Amp Guard, aren't ingrained in the Amp Guard fighting culture, so they don't, when I was teaching with the block strike, don't do wild swinging stuff, boom, 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 and this is Amp Guard fighting, right? This is Amp Guard martial arts, boom, 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 like this, right? And new players don't do that. New players don't know not to do that, right? New players are swinging their sword around all over the place, and if you've got, a lot of new players, and you don't have to be a great fighter to recognize a great fighter, right? Like, boxing coaches don't have to be great boxers. So you could take some kid, I'm just using you as an example because you're right in front of me and you look like a kid, who is just doing some random weird stuff with a sword, and you don't have to be a great fighter yourself to come over and be like, okay, you're doing this thing, maybe you should cut out maybe this weird flourish part in the middle, and then just go from one point to another point. And that, the clear, it doesn't stop them from doing the thing that they're trying to do. You don't want to go up to this kid and say, stop doing everything you're doing because it's wrong and do exactly what I show you how to do. Everybody has their own fighting style, and if you can take whatever the shots that he's throwing and break them into the component little pieces, and then identify what works in a context of Amp Guard martial arts and what doesn't, and then recognize those pieces and use those, make a shot out of those, then definitely that's the best way to do it. All right, another thing, so that's essentially shot creation. There's a much better video than what I just explained. Isaac and Brett, or Anatole and Brett, and Shion taught an SKBC class on shot creation, and there's a great 2-hour video on the internet about it, and they explain it amazingly, and that's awesome. So you should, if you're interested in shot creation, definitely watch that video. So the next part, I want to do a little bit of theory. So this is just like the mental part of fighting. And when you get past like a middle tier level, you can get to be a middle tier fighter with just athletics. Like if you're just physical and fast and strong, and you can be a middle tier fighter, right? You can't become greater than a middle tier fighter without a mental game. And you hear that term all the time, mental game. It's just kind of, a philosophy on combat, the way your brain works, being able to recognize baits, fakes, stuff like this, be able to set people up in your head, be able to remember, have a Rolodex of fighters in your head, right? I fought, me and Atlas have been demonstrating a lot today. And we fought a little bit during the winners losers. And I remember every shot that Atlas threw during winners and losers right now. Right? So next time I fight Atlas, be it, a year, 2 years down the road, I'll be able to go back to that Rolodex and remember the stuff that Atlas throws, right? I'm gonna remember that Atlas likes to tap and continue walking in on me instead of tapping and then taking a step back and okay, let's go. Okay, Atlas likes you to come forward on me. So I remember that now, and I'll be able to set up for that. That's a mental game. It's part of your mental game. Remembering people's shots, remembering how people fight, using your body to manipulate their body, being able to think about a fight while you're fighting. And this was one of the hardest things for me to do. And I know how hard it is. I spent 3 or 4 or 5 years fighting non-stop before I ever had this weird moment in my head where it's just I'm sitting here fighting a guy, and now I was consciously aware that I was thinking about this fight from a third person perspective. Right? My body's sitting here fighting, but my brain is viewing this fight disconnected from my body, and I'm able to think about stuff during the fight, which is what allows warlords to adapt. Right? Adaptation is so fundamental to top tier fighting. You'll get top tier fighters that go back and forth all day, and the reason they go back and forth with each other all day is to be able to adapt. Atlas is doing one thing, he gets me 3-4 times in a row. And I'm gonna take a second, I'm gonna be why is Atlas killing me? What am I doing that's wrong? What is he doing that's right? What are the circumstances in which this is happening? And I'll be able to identify what's going on, what the anomaly is. Because anytime you lose, and it's an anomaly. So I'll be able to recognize this, and okay, I know now. I'm not, he's pushing hard in here, and I'm not taking this step outside. So next time I fight Atlas, sure enough, he comes straight in, Rhino charging me. Boom, take this step outside, boom, big shoulder time. And it works. And I'm gonna kill him like 5 times in a row. Then he's gonna take a step back and say, all right, what happened? I was winning a lot earlier, and then something changed, and I've been losing like 5 fights in a row. And he's gonna say to himself, he's like, okay, I was going straight in. I was doing that the early part, I was winning. I'm still going straight in, now I'm losing. What is he doing? What is Sain doing that's different now? He's like, before I was going straight in, he was backing straight up. Now he's taking a sidestep and hitting me in the shoulder. Okay, what do I recognize the anomaly, right? Now what do I do about that? So now Atlas is thinking, next time he comes in, he's like, okay, now Sain's gonna take a big step to my right, and I charge in. So I'm gonna charge in to the last second, boom, take a step to the right with him. And then we're back to where we were when I was losing. And it goes back and forth like that all day, every day, right? And the reason this makes you a better fighter is because it makes you think about every fight. You have to plan it out. You have to work at it. Let's see. Man, I lost my train of thought real bad. Oh, I was going somewhere too, and I lost it. Anybody have any questions about like all the mental stuff? No? Okay. Yeah, we're probably an hour, half an hour past when we're supposed to stop anyway, so. Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about fighting, I'm more than happy. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, quick question. Mostly for these newer guys. How do you prepare yourself mentally to fight somebody that you feel is way, way better than you?
All right, how many people get nervous in tournament fights? There we go. Yeah, me too. I used to get so nervous when I was fighting good bros. Like somebody I knew, like bros that were way better than me. I get so nervous because, nobody cares really. It's an amp guard fight, right? But you want to do well, right? You want to prove to you, like these guys you kind of look up to, you want to do well. So what I did, and y'all can use this if you want, and I know that a lot of people suffer from tournament anxiety. It's like test anxiety, it's everything. Anything where people are watching and you want to perform well, so you get really, anxious about it. And it used to happen to me all the time. It still happens to me. When I fight Brennan, if you're ever watching this video, I get super nervous when I fight you. But the way I get over it, the way I got over it in tournaments, is I would force myself to smile during the fight. Even if I wasn't actually happy, I would sit there like, man, I'm so nervous, I want to do well, and like Isaac's watching, and like all this stuff, and like I would force myself to smile. Right? And every time I got nervous, I forced myself to smile, and eventually it's just a ritual that you use to relieve the anxiety, right? And so come up with something on your own. Fight this one good piece of advice I found is like if you're super nervous fighting like, Grim in a tournament or something, go fight him 15 times before the tournament fights, right? Get some experience on him. Get to the point where you're just like fighting, you're joking around with him, right? Make him not as imposing, right? Because he's a cool guy. He'll hang out with you. He's not like this super dude on top of the mountain, which is unfortunately what most of us see top tier fighters as, right? It's just like this dude's kind of like at the top of the, he'll never notice me. Like I'll fight him in tournaments, like he doesn't even remember me at all, right? And you're like, oh, please, like I just want to like bask in your light. Right? And we were all like that. I was like that. Everybody's just like, I just want them to like me or think I'm a good fighter or whatever. And I was like that coming up too, and that's what everybody is. And unfortunately, that makes you super nervous to fight that guy. Because you don't want to lose, you don't want to look bad. It's just human nature. So you use things that relieve nervous tension, right? Do some jumping jacks. That's a big thing in like public speaking. Like when they teach public speaking in like in an academic environment, like if you get performance anxiety, like stage fright or like whatever, do some exercise right before you have to do a thing, and it relieves anxiety. And so, you do these things, build some little rituals like I did. Now I smile all the time, just accidentally, and bugs the fuck out of me, which is pretty cool. But yeah, build little rituals. You know, do some jumping jacks before the tournament. Go fight Grim a bunch of times if you get nervous fighting. You know, you have to activate. If you're just expecting to not get nervous just because you can become a better fighter, you're just gonna get nervous everything. That's how I would prepare myself mentally for fighting somebody who I know is better than me. Also, just go through a checklist in your head. Like your tournament checklist should be. We talked about those 4 tools you want to keep super sharp, right? And all the rest of the tools in your toolbox. The only tools you should ever take into a tournament are those 4 super sharp ones. Everything else goes out the window. Anything you're working on, anything that's not perfect, anything that's 90% shot that you're just like, oh, I'm gonna throw this crazy thing, goes out the window. Don't take it to a tournament. The only shots you take to a tournament are the shots you know you can absolutely throw perfectly. You know how to throw them, you know when to throw them, and you know what it looks like when you win with them. Those are the shots you take to a tournament. Tournament's about minimalizing mistakes. The person who makes the least number of mistakes in a tournament wins. So go through a checklist in your head, you know? Okay, shots I know I want. You know, make sure my feet are good. Okay, make sure when I'm retreating out and away. You know, just checklist. Minimalize mistakes. Don't go into a fight unprepared. This is the biggest killer, right? Is you just walk into a fight and you're just like, oh, I don't really have a plan or I know what I'm doing, and you just get murdered. You know, that's how you prepare to fight people better than you. Anything else? All right, thanks for coming, everybody.
Thanks for coming yourself.
I hope it was worth your money.